I've talked about this before, but I want to talk about it constructively, briefly and constructively. I'm going to try to focus my mind. I'm not going to let chat distract me. Okay? Look at this tweet. This tweet here explains, unfortunately, like tragically, it explains a lot about politics. Did the chimp kill itself? The chimp killed itself in a creative and gruesome manner. Okay? The chimp's wife came back home and was not happy with what she saw. The chimp is gone, and the chimp is everywhere in a way, if you know what I mean. Net support for a federal law limiting how much companies can raise the price of food/groceries. Plus 15%. A federal law establishing price controls on food and groceries. Minus 10%. Median voter syndrome. I'm sure you all understand the problem with this. It's like the Affordable Care Act versus Obamacare. The reason why Obamacare ended up being the widely Obamacare ended up being a really broadly used term is because the Affordable Care Act, it's actually a really good name, like in terms of it sounding good, but not sounding so ambitious that people get suspicious of it. I remember there being polling back during the Obama administration where people's support for the Affordable Care Act was like plus 17, plus 18, and their support for the Obamacare Act was like minus 11, minus 12, that kind of thing. You know, it was just a smear in an effort to sway public opinion, which worked, you know? Isn't it great getting like super, super, super invested in politics and educating yourself on how it all works and what the theoretical solutions to all these tough problems might be? And then you get reminded that at the end of the day, it all kind of boils down to support from the voter base. And the voter base is, you know, not doing great. Morons. I love learning that everything's stupid. You would have learned that earlier if you had taken a look at the channel banner that I've got going on my main channel. It's true. It's true. Unfortunately, this is one of the reasons why I've said that intelligence means nothing if you can't communicate it. The best ideas in the world are worthless if they're locked up here. Being correct is one half of the battle. It's not even really half. It's more like a third of the battle. It's not even a third. Being correct is shockingly easy. Oftentimes, I think, because oftentimes the issue being discussed they're really simple. It's not difficult being right. Convincing other people that you're right, on the other hand, shockingly difficult, sometimes impossible. It's unfortunate, but it's true. You're up against a multi-billion-dollar media oligarchy. You know, you're up against people who have been having their brains massaged by Fox News every day of their lives for the past 43 years. It's pretty difficult to overwhelm that with any amount of facts and logic. That being said, Vosh, you're really selling me on this Stalinism thing, and I'm not going to joke. I said this when we were watching that debate that Hasan Minhaj had with that representative, a former rep of the Chinese Communist Party. This is a failing of democracy, right? Authoritarian governments are often run by lunatics. The Nazis, for example, if you read literally any accurate historical literature, were shockingly incompetent in many... Did I say Hasan Minhaj? Mehdi Hasan. Then who's Hasan Minhaj? Did I make that up or is that a different person? Comedian. Wait. Is he the guy from, where did I get that name from? The Daily Show? Oh, he was the guy who replaced Jon Stewart. Well, that guy didn't debate the former Chinese Communist Party official. He's the guy who plays Iron Man. No, yeah, that's Trevor Noah. He had a Netflix show. Wait, the guy from Parks and Rec? Didn't that guy have a Netflix show? No, that's a different guy. Then who's Hasan Minhaj? I could Google an answer, but frankly, I feel like sometimes the road less traveled. What race? Just a guy on The Daily Show? He was a correspondent. Why would I know the name of a correspondent on The Daily Show? His filmography. I don't know any of these. The Spy Who Dumped Me. Arrested Development, which I never saw. The Daily Show. White House Correspondents' Dinner. Patriot Act with Hasan Minhaj. Minhaj, not Minhaj. Minhaj. Didn't you make a spiel about not getting distracted? You're right, I did. His Netflix show was canceled because he criticized Saudi Arabia and India? No shit. Okay, I feel like this is coming back to me now. I feel like this is starting to... Patriot Act with Hasan Minhaj. Okay, that's why I went to that. But now I forget about who I was talking about in the first place. Mehdi Hasan. And all of these are different guys from Hasan Piker, who's a different guy. I am killing myself. All right. So what I've done here is I've flawlessly demonstrated the point that I was trying to make, which is that democracy is filled with people like me making decisions, which is just not what you want. You know, it is a legitimate flaw to democracy, that you're kind of pulled around by the whims of the voting populace, and that, like, the voting population, and that, you know, oftentimes they can be, sometimes they can even be as bad as me, which you really, really don't want if you want your country to vote for the good candidates. You don't want that. Vosh in the voting booth wondering where he knows the name Harris from. So true. Okay, the point that I'm trying to make, and I think I'm making it, just not in the way, I'm making my point, but in a way that denigrates me, which is not call them out for being ableist, you're face blind because autism. Apparently I'm a few things blind on this one. We're going to recenter ourselves here. Okay. The point that I'm trying to get at here, you know, desperately crawling my way over towards, is the fact that you're kind of like, your ability to advocate for anything good in the world is more or less limited by the whims of the voting population, and the voting population is not very bright. They might be as bad as me. So this is one of the reasons why I stress like practicality so much when I talk about political advocacy, or your willingness or ability to, you know, push for certain positions or use certain talking points. I use language here on this stream that I wouldn't recommend you guys use when talking to other people. For example, I use terms like bourgeoisie. I might say, for example, that my argument that in democracies the voting population is often kind of retarded is a product of the fact that the ruling ideology is the sort of mass, the widely accepted ideology, the ideology of the masses. So bourgeois ideology might be internalized by members of the working class, and for that reason they might agree kind of like broadly and blindly with the idea of a law that limits how much more expensive their groceries can get. But when you hear the terms price controls, then you get reminded of Cuba, communist China, you know, Vietnam, whatever. You no, I've heard of those are bad, but they're the same as this. It's the same. These are the same thing. In this regard, their opposition to the concept isn't really like a principled one. They're not opposed to what a price control might entail. They're opposed to the term, and that's because the term is one that we hold in low regard. Admittedly, there are problems with price controls. Economically, in a market economy, they're not always the cleanest solution to your problems. Now, I'm not one of those people who's going to pretend that they're always a problem. Much like rent control, it has its place in a broader system of reforms, but you know, it's not always easy. You have to be careful with how you advocate for things. You know, I say bourgeoisie, but when you talk about this, you know, these kinds of political messages on a like say the DNC stage, you might have people like AOC. They don't say proletariat, they say the working class. They don't say bourgeoisie, they say, you know, big business, Wall Street. But fundamentally, they're all referring to the same basic grievance, you know, the same basic group. Does it fill you with despair when you see this? Do you despair at this? So I see a bit of hope. I do see a bit of hope. It's a lot like how when you ask people what they support via referendum at a state level, it's like, oh, 73% of Florida wants legal marijuana. You know, 58% of Florida wants felons to be able to be reenfranchised and be able to vote, you know? And then they go ahead and vote for Ron DeSantis. People are more in favor of progressive ideas than they are in favor of progressive terminology or progressive politicians, which to me is a little bit kind of a silver lining, because to me it speaks to like their underlying belief system, right? Once you get past the jargon, what do they actually believe? Yeah, defund the police versus allocate funds to social services type people, exactly. When you look at their values versus what they've been told to believe, they believe nothing, they're sock puppets. That's not true. I don't think that's true at all. I think actually, in reality, the whims of the voting population can be terrifyingly, I guess, difficult to rein in, you know? It can be really, really, really difficult to get a handle on them. And we're not better than them. You guys might think you are because you're familiar with the issues. But the underlying bias at hand here, this dynamic where you have a value system that points one way, but a set of like terms and shallow beliefs that point another, everyone is subject to this, just in different areas, you know? It's just important, I think, because the average person doesn't really realize what these mean, but why then are we educating them not to know? It's not innate. Exactly, Eddie, exactly, you know? The proletariat understands what they want, what their interests are. They have to be educated out of acting on those interests. Oh, you want groceries and rent to be more affordable? Oh, no, 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 you can't do that. That's communism. Okay, so they know what they want. They just have to be taught that what they want is impossible or undesirable, actually. Oh, you want more like opportunity for your children. All right, well, that's why we want free market economics, and trickle down economy, blah, 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 blah. They know what they want. They have to be educated into thinking the wrong things about what they want. I guess what I'm saying is that I think that the political education offered by left-leaning people is usually political education that better centers members of the working class on things they already want, whereas the right has to constantly obsess over pointing them to things they don't want or care about and making them care about them. It takes more effort and more social force to make people fearmonger over like transgender people than it does to make them care about groceries and rent. They have to be forced into that.